Today I'm going to be showing you how I do my 4-strand braid for poi ball ropes. What you're going to need is some yarn. For this video I'm going to be using 4 different strands so that it is easier to track what I'm doing. But in most cases I would only use 2 colors. So I do my strings a generous 6 feet. If you're making them for a child, you're not going to need that much length. But if you try to do it to specs and you come up short, you're going to be pretty upset. So this is what I do. You'll have excess at the end. Just braid until the length that you need, or you can continue on and you just ball it up in the actual poi ball. This comes in handy when something has happened to the actual ball and you need to replace it. You don't always have to replace the ropes, or if they grow and you need longer ones, you could just pull more rope out of the ball. It's a good idea to have some excess. The other thing you're going to need is zip ties. These are little mini 4-inch zip ties. I have done it the more traditional way of just tying it off with yarn. I've used rubber bands, but the zip ties really do secure the best in my opinion, and they are also the easiest to get tight and secure. You're also going to need scissors and something to wrap the yarn around to make the tassel. I'm going to be using a big wide ruler. You're going to want something that's at least 6 inches wide. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to cut your strings. Because every yarn is going to have a different thickness, my end cluster, I try to make it about the size of a pencil. So your yarn all together at the end is going to be the size of about 4 pencils. Depending on the weight of your yarn, that's going to change the number of strings that you're ultimately going to need in the end. After you've done that, then you're going to make your tassel. Now, a reminder is that you're going to be doing all of this twice. This setup is for 1 rope. You are going to need 2 ropes, so you're going to repeat this process identically a second time. To make the tassel, you are going to take all of the yarns that you've used, unless for some reason you want your tassel to be only 1 color. You are going to take the ends of all the yarns and whatever object you're going to be wrapping around, and just start wrapping. Now again, how many times you wrap is going to be determined by the weight of your yarn. If you're using a thinner yarn, you're probably going to have to wrap more. If you're using a thicker yarn, you're going to wrap less. And it also depends on your personal preference of the size of your pom-pom or tassel at the end. So that is probably good. You're going to trim this off, then slide this bundle off. Okay. Cut your ends open. So after you've done that, you are going to take this soon-to-be tassel pom-pom ball. It's not going to be even, that's okay. You're going to take your strings and put the middles in the middle of the tassel. And then fold your yarn ball over. Now the tassels don't need to be exactly the same at the end. You can trim them later. You're going to take your zip tie and you're going to secure it. Okay, just get it positioned how you want it. And just really just try to get it as tight as you can on there. So this is how it's going to end up. When you go back and you trim your pom-poms, then you're going to go ahead and you're going to trim this end. Now I will trim it short and then take a file to it, or you can also just put a dot of hot glue on it. If you've ever worked with zip ties, you'll know that it leaves a little bit of a sharp edge, so you're just going to want to do something to cover up the sharp edge. So you're going to need something that gives you a counterweight. Now we are at the point of braiding. Now because I'm using 4 colors, it doesn't really matter which one starts. But if you were to use just 2 colors and have one of each on each side, depending on if they're both the same color on top and the same color on the bottom, or if it is opposite on each side, is going to determine whether it goes down with the same colors down the side or if the colors are going to spiral down the rope. I personally don't think that it really matters which way. It's a way of preference, but you're just going to want to remember which way you set it up so that you could do the identical thing on the other rope. Alright, so you're going to need a counterweight. You could really use another person, you could use an object. For most people in the hula world, when you braid something or you weave something, you put it in between your toes. It's really just up to you, but you are going to want something that's going to provide some counterweight to do this. But because I'm going to try to keep this in the frame of the video, I'm not using one, but you should. So what the pattern is under 2 over 1. And every time you do that, it's going to be the same pattern, under 2 over 1. So what that means is, let me see if I can do this spread out. You're going to take your outside one and you're going to go under 2. Then you're going to go over 1. If you could see that. So we went under the light gray and the red, and then over the red. You're not going to want to let this be this loose, but for the purposes of explaining, this is what it is. So the next time you're going to take the outermost on the opposite side that you just did, and you're going to go under 2, so under the red and the white, and over 1, so you'll go back over the white. And here is your next setup. And you're just going to continue this on. So under 2 using the alternating side and over 1. Under 2 to over 1. So as you can see, it's pulling closer to me, and that's because I'm not using a counterweight. We're starting to get our braid going. It is very loose because of the way that I am doing it. At this point, I am going to restart it using a counterweight. So as my counterweight, I'm going to be using my foot. Alright, so here we go. Under 2, over 1. Under 2, over 1. And as you can see, your hands are going to go somewhat in a braiding motion, and by doing this and really not letting go of the ropes is how you are going to keep your tension. So under 2, and then I switch hands, over 1. Because you're using so much yarn, you're also going to get knots, so just make sure you're running your fingers through it. My other suggestion to you is going to be not to stop. It is really difficult, in my opinion, to try to pick it back up, or if you lose your place in the pattern, to try to figure out where you are again. You will end up undoing quite a bit to try to get it right again. So I'm really going to suggest to you that you don't stop and that you do it in one sitting continuously until you're done. So at this point, I'm just going to continue on. Now that you have braided to the point or past the point where you feel like is long enough, you're going to go ahead and put a knot at the end of the string just to hold the braid from coming undone. The correct measurements for a long poi is going to be from the poi ball being in the palm of the hand and the tassel being able to reach the armpit. because you currently don't have the poi ball on the end of this rope. So how you're going to measure this is from the tassel touching the armpit, you are going to measure to the start of the wrist, and that is going to make it so that the finished product is the appropriate length once you add the ball to the end of it. So how I mark that off on the rope is I usually just take a small hair rubber band to mark that point so that after you have made the ball and connected it, you know where the rope needs to start. In the next part, I am going to be showing you how I make the actual ball and how I attach it. I hope that it has helped to explain to you how the 4-stranded braids are done.